You're listening to the Agent and the Fan podcast with sports agent Chris Leible and fan Lou Columna.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Leible. Welcome to the Agent and the Fan podcast. I'm the agent. I'm here with my man Lou Columna. Lou's the fan. Lou, it's been a while. Happy New Year. It's a little late to be saying Happy New Year, according to Larry David.
Yeah.
But Happy New Year to you and our audience. And it's a very exciting time of the year as we're turning the calendar to January. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm excited about NFL football. That's going to be really kind of at the forefront for the next couple of weeks, of course, until spring training. So a lot going on with the Jets and Giants, which we'll get into. But I just have a lot of thoughts on that, especially on the coaching search.
Oh yeah, we should definitely talk about that. I know we usually kind of talk about baseball for the most part here. Obviously, you're a big Jets fan too. Not easy to be a Jets fan nowadays.
Not easy.
And obviously the playoffs are going on, and that's something you're not used to either with the Jets. So,
touche.
Yeah. So that's with some kind of craziness going on with the playoffs, which we should talk about a little bit. But I guess the Jets and Giants are interesting subjects into themselves. They're definitely interesting case studies. The Giants won a game late in the year and kind of played themselves out of the top two spots. There's two top quarterbacks in the draft. Of course, the great, everybody's favorite, Cam Ward, my man.
The one and only.
The one and only. And then Shedeur Sanders, of course, is the other top quarterback. Will they go 1 and 2? That'll be interesting to see. The Titans certainly seem like at number 1, they can use a quarterback. And I heard that they do like Cam Ward, make a lot of sense. And I think that would be the first Hurricane quarterback to go number 1 since Vinny.
Since Vinny, yeah.
But
there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. I would say let's start with the Jets, because it's just so frustrating. It seems like, we had an interview with Leible. We thought, hey man, you know what? This is a possibility.
Did you say Leible?
Yeah,
it's Leible.
Apologies.
Leible. It's a V.
And as soon as the Patriots let their coach go, I was like, okay, we're not getting him. I mean, I knew right there and then, and so I had my hopes up for this guy. Obviously, didn't get him. Rex came in for an interview. Rex seemed very confident he was going to get the gig.
Well, Rex is Rex.
I know you have thoughts on him. I think you said you wouldn't mind him back. I wouldn't mind him back, but he wouldn't have been my first choice. Now, obviously, McCarthy being fired by the Cowboys, that opens up a spot for them to interview him. I mean, they've gone through, I think, the whole NFL. It's just incredible. This organization just seems never to get it. I know I suffer with them, but it's so frustrating that we can't just seem to get it right. We just can't. I mean, Bill Parcells aside, you could even say Mike Tannenbaum's, was a good run. But we just can't. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's in the Jet DNA. It's just so.
Well, I think part of it is the ownership, if I'm being honest.
Well, I mean, Woody, yeah, for sure, Woody.
I think that's a big part of the problem. A lot of things came out, a lot of rumors. I don't know what the truth is. It's not
about his son coaching the team, running the team.
About his teenage sons, not going by Madden ratings, as opposed to the actual on-field stuff, and turning down some trades. And
by the way, none of that would surprise me. Yeah,
I think that's the tough part of it, and I think that's I think Bill Belichick would have made a lot of sense, but again, I can't really get to the bottom of that. What exactly happened there, and I think the Jets have tried all different things through the years. They've tried veteran coaches. They've tried young up-and-comers. They've never seemed to really make it click. Rex did have a lot of success, and he won he went to the 2 AFC championship games back to back with the Jets, which you can't be said for the Jets. Really hasn't happened a whole lot in a long, long time. And, the whole rumor, I don't know how much you buy into that stuff. If Joe Namath really did sell his soul to the devil to get the Jets to win the Super Bowl III, but I don't know. But my kids joke around about it, and your kids are the same age, that they've never seen the Jets in the playoffs in their whole lives. So
it's
kind of sad. And then they won a few games, and now they don't have a top draft pick. And what do you do? And what do you do about quarterback? There's so many questions with the Jets. So I don't know. I mean, that's going to be a real tough one. As far as the Giants go, I think, as we said, the Giants kind of played their way out of the. What was that? Okay. The Giants, I think they didn't get a top 3 pick. Will they trade up? Do they like enough one of the quarterbacks to trade a lot of draft capital to get one? Good questions. I don't know the answer to that. The Giants also went the opposite direction of the Jets. They kept their coach, which was an interesting decision.
Not shocking, by the way, though.
Not shocking, but they've obviously their ownership group's been a lot more stable through the years. They're not used to having tough seasons like this. So it'll be interesting to see where the direction they go in. Will they get a veteran quarterback? Will they trade up? Will they settle? Will they trade back and maybe like somebody else? I saw that Quinn Ewers is now in the draft. He's the number 3 quarterback in the draft. Look at last year. Bo Nix ended up being, maybe besides Jaden Daniels, the best quarterback of all the young guys. So it'll play itself out. Will the Browns go with the quarterback? It looks like Deshaun Watson is out again. Not that he was doing well. Will the Browns just kind of scrap the whole Deshaun Watson and bite the bullet and just start over again with a new quarterback? And I think Deion Sanders is going to have a lot to say about that too. He basically was to do an Eli Archie Manning thing with Shador. I think Cam, being the gentleman and outstanding human he is, will go to the team that drafts him and sell. So, I'm excited to see how that's going to play out. And I'm a big draft Nick. So I'm looking forward to seeing how all that's going to play itself out as over the next couple of months, and then obviously free agency. But as far as the playoffs go, the games were kind of crappy, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
A lot of badly played games this year. There was one decent game, and then really for the most part not great games. But I think this coming weekend
that's going to change. That's going to change this weekend.
Yeah, set up for some very good matchups. Obviously, headlined by the Bills and Ravens. So I think the Ravens are just clicking on all cylinders. They're a great team. The Bills are got the home field advantage. Josh Allen, but obviously Lamar and Derrick Henry is just a devastating combination.
100%.
They always have a good defense, and so the Ravens are definitely a team that you gotta think have a chance to get to New Orleans for the Super Bowl, but they're gonna have to go through a really tough place to play to get there. So that'll be a great game, and obviously you have the Chiefs sitting and waiting, and people are kind of bashed the Chiefs this year. They're still 15-2, and they still have number 15 playing quarterback.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying. What I will say is, would I be shocked if the Chiefs made a run and got no, but they didn't even score 30 points the whole year, which is amazing to me. And Josh Allen is playing at such a different level this year than previous years.
But the Chiefs always find a way to win a game.
Yeah, but you know what? I listen, I don't disagree with that, but again, you could say that about the Chiefs every year, right? They're not going to win.
No, but they're 15-2. They've definitely snuck by a lot of games, but they always find a way to win. Look at the Jets; they always find a way to lose. So
even when they're not playing, you have Sam Darnold. They find a way to lose.
No, but how many games early in the season did the Jets lose, and then kind of came apart at the seams? And Robert Saleh. We can talk about that all day. The Rams are playing great. Sean McVay's a genius. Matthew Stafford. That Philly's going to have a a battle on their hands to beat the Rams, but the Eagles are playing great, so you got to give it to them. And then and the Texans had a really great game against the Chargers, so they're going to give the Chiefs. I think they potentially give the Chiefs something to worry about. And then obviously the Lions will make their first postseason appearance as a number 1 seed, and obviously their team that's been ravaged with injuries, but has forged on, found a way. Dan Campbell's been amazing. Aaron Glenn, as a former Jet, it's been fantastic. He's going to get a head coaching job somewhere, may even be with the Jets, maybe with the Saints. This guy has had so many devastating defensive injuries and keeps putting in people in places that are doing such a great job. And this guy has done an amazing job. And I got to give a big shout out. Hutchinson got hurt, one of the top young guys in the league. But I got to give a shout out to my man from New Jersey, from my neck of the woods, via the U, Al-Qadim Muhammad. Al-Qadim Muhammad came in and took Hutchinson's place. This guy has done nothing but put pressure on quarterbacks all season since Hutchinson went out. They picked him up, brought him in, and Al-Qadim Muhammad, you're the man. Great job. So I think that's
always circle back to the U.
It just does. It's like this. It's listen, Al-Qadim Muhammad, unbelievable. Great job, Al-Qadim. So listen, Lou, we have a special guest that's coming on. I want to just give him a little intro before he comes in. And we're going to get into baseball now. But his name's Andy Martino. I think a lot of our audience is going to know him from SNY. He's an analyst on there. He's talking about the Mets, Yankees, baseball in general. He's I've known him a long time. He's been a beat writer. He's been a columnist in New York for a long time. Very good guy and very knowledgeable, and also a guy just who has his finger on the pulse of what's going on. I want to get into that with Andy about free agency and kind of where things are going, because we seem to still have this logjam in the market, and there's so many guys that are still sitting out there, and what's going to happen, because we're in the middle of January now and spring training is literally around the corner.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we got about 100 free agents, right? And that's including some big names. And that's something I wanted to talk to Andy about, because I really think forget about the top tier guys. We know those guys, right? We know the Sotos are going to get their money and those other guys, right? But it seems to be that trend of like, hey, if you're 30 or even 31, you're not going to get that deal that you thought you were going to get, 5, 6, 7 years ago. They're really kind of buckling down on that. So it's going to be interesting to see, where a lot of these guys land. Bregman, Pete Alonso, obviously here in New York. It's 100 free agents. 100.
But it's not only 100, it's big name guys. Anthony Santander,
another one.
All these name guys, and
he hit more home runs than Soto this past year, and he's still not signed.
Yep.
I mean,
and everybody thought when Soto signed that would kind of set the domino effect. It really hasn't happened.
It hasn't.
The domino effect happened to all the first basemen, but Pete Alonso's still out there. So it's wild, and it's one of those years. And we've talked about this here in the past couple of months about you never know when it's going to play itself out. So will it be the next domino to fall that causes that makes this whole engine roll, or will it just be dribs and drabs like it's been?
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's crazy. They're going to there's going to be a lot of challenges, but we'll see. Well, let's welcome in our guest, Andy Martino.
Andy,
what's up, guys? Hi, Chris.
What's going on? How are you, Andy? That's Lou.
Hi, Lou. Nice to meet you.
So, Andy, you shaved your beard.
Well, what can I say? I used to need it to look older, and now I'm old. So who needs it?
Well, I'm getting. My wife always tells me it just makes me look old, so I just keep doing it anyway.
You got to give into it at some point. It's true.
Yeah, I maybe I should go the other way. I got to figure that out. But no, thank you so much for joining us. We talked a little bit about a couple of different things before you came on. We were talking a little bit of football, but Andy, as I had mentioned, I gave you a little intro earlier, but Andy is an analyst on SNY here in New York, and Andy has been a columnist. He's an insider. He knows the game inside and out. He's got his ear to the ground. He's always breaking stories, rumors. So anybody who isn't familiar with you, I'm assuming most of our audience is, but if you're not, Andy's your guy. And Andy also, I want to just make people know that I think people associate with the Mets because of SNY, and I know you were a beat writer for the Mets a long time. That's how I got to know you. But but you also obviously have been very involved in the Yankees, and you have a book that recently came out called The Yankee Way. Talk to us about that, Andy.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. That was a project. I spent about 2 years in extensive conversations with Brian Cashman on the whole history of his career, the Yankees baseball operation, and my vow to Cashman in doing that, because he was very adamant, like, this is not my book. I'm not ready to write a book. Don't present this as my book. So I was like, great. I'll be objective and impartial and talk to everyone else I can talk to, which is what I did. So it was really interesting writing that history of Yankees baseball ops for a couple of reasons. One, they have a continuity, whether you like what they do or don't, they have a continuity that's unparalleled. So they are like the story of all the changes in the industry. From, you could draw a line from when Stick Michael, the longtime, legendary GM, arrived there as a player in '68 to today. Like there's such a line there where there's been so much. How many GMs have the Mets had since Cashman's been the GM?
He's been there so long. It's incredible.
Right. So there's that was interesting. And just the idea that if we learn why they made decisions in the past, I think we understand a little bit more why they make certain decisions and don't do certain things now. So that's what that was. It was fascinating. And I appreciated that Brian opened up to a degree and gave me some good time over a couple of years. So that was fun to do.
So one thing, it's funny. Brian obviously is an interesting figure in the game, and especially here in New York. I think it's funny. He's a great guy. He's a really nice, down to earth guy. I think people, maybe a lot of the fans don't know that. We've talked about this before. I know, like, Bill Belichick is an old friend of mine. I've known Bill forever. And Bill is just a funny, cool guy, but he doesn't give you that persona. And I think he purposely doesn't give you that persona. But Brian, I think, just because he's got this, this whatever you want to say, a dream job, he kind of doesn't get. I don't think he gets the credit and the recognition he deserves. But he's a great guy. He's extremely smart, knowledgeable, engaging. And I'm a big fan of his, and I really like Brian a lot. And I think that, I'm glad that you did this, because it gives some insight, I think, to the fans that, there's more than just, oh, I didn't like that trade, or, why did we sign this guy, or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And to your point about what kind of guy he is, I think it speaks to that. The best thing to speak to that is how do your people think of you? And, when I, a couple of years ago, went around contacting people that had worked for and with him, or that he had worked for when he was younger, people at all levels of his past and present were so happy to talk about him. And but I was also out of respect, like, okay, I got to check in with Cash before I talk to you. I mean, he commands that kind of loyalty and respect, and he is seen among his people as a really good leader. And I think, Chris, you've obviously been very involved with high level baseball ops executives too over many years. And I think that one thing that separates them isn't always their intelligence, although they're all smart. You got to be smart even to get a job like that. But it's actually your leadership skills, right? That's why sometimes and your decision-making and leadership skills, is sometimes when a really smart person, let's say a front office somewhere, gets really trendy, and a bunch of the assistant GMs get jobs elsewhere, and it doesn't always work out. It's like, well, because that person might be smart, but maybe they're not a leader. Or maybe they're not a good negotiator, and so what Cashman, I don't think you'd find anybody that's dealt with Cashman that would say that he doesn't have those qualities, and that's why he's lasted for so long in this market.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Andy,
Lou is a huge Yankee fan, if you can't tell. I want you to chime in.
So Andy, I mean, listen, one of the things that, as a fan, but also I've seen throughout the years, the Cashman years, that he rubs people the wrong way, in that he's very direct. I appreciate that, by the way. I appreciate that, because even when the whole thing, and I know this is in your book, the whole situation with Jeter, I always say, and I love Jeter, he wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong. He says, this is what we're comfortable with, kind of like what's happening with Pete now with the Mets. This is what we are. So I appreciate that from Brian. I've always been a fan. When you're in this position for this amount of time, you're going to have misses, right? I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. But I think overall, he's done a fantastic job. I think, he is always kind of, I don't want to say on the cutting edge, but he's looking at other things that other GMs maybe don't look at. I think the fact, like their pitching, their relief pitching, how they tend to get these guys out of nowhere and build them up and make them what they are. I really like Brian. What in these 2 years did you find from Brian that maybe was surprising to you?
Oh, that's an interesting question, Lou. Surprising, I would say, the level of conflict between Brian and George Steinbrenner was even deeper than I ever would have thought, to the point where like, at some point it's like, what's wrong with you? Why did you keep working for this guy? Like it would be like you knew that the Yankees could be the Bronx Zoo at certain times, but you didn't know things necessarily like specifically. Like I was trying to sign Miguel Cairo because, I'm just picking one random example. And down in Tampa, George is like, no, we did Tony Womack. And then Cashman's openness is like, he's telling me on the record, and Tony Womack was a disaster. I mean, Tony Womack's still out there. Maybe that's, so it's that directness, but like still just like, oh my God, I can't believe I was trying to run a baseball organization and there was all this meddling going on. You remember a couple of years ago when Vlad Guerrero Jr. said he would never play with the Yankees and he wouldn't say why? You guys know, you might know why or guess why. It's almost certainly because this is one of those situations. Cashman calls George, and this would have been the winter of 2000, after 2003, and said, we got Vlad Guerrero signed. And George is like, no, you don't. I just signed Chef. It's like, oh, what? So like that level of dysfunction, the fact that we're able to post winning records and be in the ALCS and World Series year in and year out when baseball ops was only sometimes like even in the loop. It was crazy for a while. I would say like the extent of that was pretty surprising.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. I think that, listen, when you have George Steinbrenner at his peak, you kind of know it's going to be, a battle. But the fact that Cashman has stayed with the Yankees also to me lets you know the respect that George had for him, because George could have fired him, right? But he didn't, because he knew what he had.
He's firing people left and right for his whole Yankee life, George Steinbrenner. And he knew there were a small group of people that he knew, like, that guy I need to keep around. Obviously, Gene Michael was one of those people. Cashman was one of those people. Like a kind of unsung player development guru named Bill Livesey, spent a long time there, almost 20 years. And that was ultimately was fired, but George knew for a long time, and hold on to this guy. Joe Torre, you could say, was there quite a while, not as long as some of these other guys, but
I gotta give a shout out to my man Mark Newman.
Yes, thank you. Yes,
that's my guy.
That's another example.
My guy.
Another example.
Brian Sabian.
George loved him. George loved Mark.
Yeah.
Mark was a great dude.
It's like a small select group of people that George somehow knew, like, don't be impulsive with these people. They're good people. And I think we named most of them probably.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
No, that's great. I think for me also, the thing that I really appreciate about Cashman is, again, it is his directness, right? And talking to the fans. And as a Yankee fan, I knew that he was doing his best every year to get the team to where he wanted it to be. Didn't work out every year, and he made some mistakes, and we know those mistakes, right? There was a point where they got so right-handed that I'm like, Brian, I was even like, Brian, what are you doing? Like, we're left-handed, and so, but I think he's not, from what I'm seeing from the outside, he's not afraid to make those changes and be wrong, and
that's right.
That's hard.
And he's not afraid to bring in voices too that'll say that to him. He's got like his like inner circle right now in the front office is really high level people, like Sabian, who you mentioned, Lou, Omar Minaya, who Chris obviously knows like super, super well over the years. And Omar is the one to go in there and pound the table and be like, we need to get more athletic. We need to get a little bit more left-handed. We need to trade for Soto. That's when I can tell you, like, when a lot of Yankees baseball ops a year ago was like, that's like how many pitchers under how many years of control. And Omar's the guy to go in there and be like, yo, it's Juan Soto. Do it. So, like, Cashman's not afraid to have those kinds of voices around him, too, that might, like, dissent.
He's brought in a lot of people throughout the years that, from different teams, GMs who were, who weren't with their teams anymore or whatever, that have really been great contributors. Billy was one, Epler, John, then obviously John Coppola came, did all the, he really built the Braves. Alex Antopoulos did a great job, but John was always, someone that Brian really leaned on because he's really good at what he does. So like just people like that, but no, it's a great read, and it's a good, I think for me, it's great insight for our audience, which I think our audience is people that want to kind of get like a little bit more of the inside as opposed to just the same kind of, talk and stuff. But
right.
So yeah, that's it's the Yankee way. Brian Cashmere, Andy Martino, check it out for sure. That said, Andy, there's a lot of free agents out there.
That's for sure.
And obviously, I think the one that we talk about on the show a lot, and we figured he'd be done by now, is obviously Pete Alonso.
Yeah.
What are you hearing, and where do you think this is going to end up?
They're nowhere, the Mets and Pete Alonso. I mean, nowhere. Now, as you know even better than I do, nowhere can become somewhere pretty fast if somebody decides it's time. But that's what it is right now. There's not a lot of optimism. Like, there's not a lot of optimistic things for me to say, like, from what I know, that it will get done. But I still think it's the most logical fit. And therefore, like, despite they're far apart, despite, like, they're dug in, and Steve Cohen is not going to get involved in this, like, everyone's insisting this is a David Stearns deal and all that, I still think, like, well, where else are these two going to go but each other? I still think that, even though it certainly hasn't been drifting in that direction for a couple of weeks now. It's like where else is he going to play, and where else are the Mets getting those home runs next year?
So Andy, I'm sorry.
Real quick, Lou. We talked about a little bit. Lou and I were talking about a little before you came on. The dominoes kind of fell as far as the first baseman, and then he just stayed out there. So all the teams so it's interesting that he's still out there, and there's really, yes, there are teams that could use him. Who has the money? What will Scott? Will Scott? Take a lesser deal or a deal he doesn't think? How is that going to be spun on that end? There's so many. It's such a interesting situation. But I agree with you. But on the same token, the Mets went out and spent a ton of money. I know money isn't that big of an object to Steve Cohen, but they spent a ton of money on Juan Soto. They have so many guys that they could move. I mean, Vientos could go to first base. I don't know how long his future at third base is going to be. He could go to, and then obviously Beatty could come back and bounce back and have a good year. And then you have all these guys, and Mauricio and Acuna, and all these guys in addition to the guys you already had. It's the Mets have a lot of possibilities. Will they pull a trade off? Could they? What are they going to do? Are they going to bring back a Winker? Are they going to trade a Marte?
Yeah.
There's so many different possibilities, and we're in the middle of January already.
I know it's getting late. Well, Stearns has got a slow heartbeat with this stuff, so I don't think that date worries him at all. And if you look at, this isn't special to David Stearns, but if you look at the opening day roster versus the playoff roster for the Mets last year, I don't think he puts a lot of stock into who's there on day one. So he's just not in a hurry. And they feel like first of all, they know that they know they need more relievers, and there's other things they're going to do. And I think they'll bring in a bat, but they also know that on the offensive side, and like specifically on the infield side, if the season started tomorrow, they're fairly comfortable where they are because of all the guys you just mentioned, Chris. And Vientos becomes a guy that plays a lot of first. And hey, what if the Blue Jays decide they are going to trade Vlad Guerrero in spring training? That there's that's like a moonshot kind of thing, but
it wouldn't be a shocker if this guy if I mean, that might be a moonshot, but it wouldn't be a shocker if he went to free agency and the Mets signed him. You know, a year from now, he was, you know, a big free agent signing of the Mets.
Exactly.
Lou's very upset about that.
Well, I have my take on this, because I have a lot of Met fan friends that always talk about this. My thing is, and I've said, Chris, I've told you this before. I would have given Soto $1 billion, because at this money, whatever.
It's all fake money at this point.
It's the years. I don't want to be stuck with the years. And the other thing is with, you know, Vlad Guerrero, you gave all of these concessions, extra concessions to Soto. Vlad's going to come in. If he has a monster, he's going to say, well, wait a minute. You gave him a suite. You gave him this, and this. To me, that's why, again, going back to Cashman, I appreciated Cashman. Cashman's like, hey, you made $765, you can afford your suite. Because then you set a precedent. All right, what if they go after 5 superstars? Are they all going to get suites? And
all of a sudden there's some rich guy calls the Mets and says, I want my suite this year. And they say, sorry, we have 26 suites.
Exactly.
That are used.
That's my point. And I think, you know, it goes back, you talking about Manaya as well, you know, when they mentioned the whole, you know, A-Rod with the +1. I think, you know, people are human, you know, guys, you know, I don't know, they're not going to hate on the guy, but I don't know. I think, to me, you know, going back to Cashman, I think he was right in doing what he did. I think the Yankees made a great offer. I think that if Soto wanted to go, he wanted to go. I wanted him back more than anybody. But at the same time, I mean, you have to have a limit. And I think Cash had his limit.
I agree. I think if you gave him truth serum, his limit was probably way below where they ended
lower.
Up. Yeah. There's two different ways to look at a deal like that, right? Like from a player sort of agent, PA perspective, player association perspective, it's like keep raising the bar. And that's very healthy for the game. And stars are great for the game and all that. And I don't disagree with all that. But if you're looking at it from the Yankees roster and the big contracts they already have and Soto's lack of defensive tools that are only going to decline further, like I'm fine with that too. I think he fits better with the Mets because they 100%. Needed to make that kind of statement.
100%. I agree.
We talked
that.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Lou, and just to be clear, you know, from your perspective, if you want to just get rid of your Yankee hat and join the Mets bandwagon, you know, you could come with Juan and Vlad. All you Dominicans could stick together, and
I'm good.
You can even have a suite. They're giving them out.
They're giving them out.
Dude, you can have a suite.
Oh no, I want the clothes and whatever else he's getting. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
No. Listen, I that's why I love Cash. You know, and I love, to be honest with you, going to the name of your book, The Yankee Way. And Chris knows about this. Like I love the Yankee way. You know, I love what they stand for. I love the way they are. You know, and I hate this whole thing of them that they say, oh, the Yankees are buttoned up. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, you know, I see, you know, I follow them on Instagram. I see them coming into, you know, to the ballpark. They're not wearing suits and, you know, ties. You know, like
that's true.
You know, it's like, you know, I think it's a perception, a lot of it. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to winning and how much are you going to give me? You know, that's the bottom line. You know, I'll shave my head. I'll shave my beard if I'm going to get the money. And at the end of the day, that's what counts.
100%. No beard is worth.
Hey, there you go. You did it yourself.
We just got talk about
beard. No one paid you for that, right, Andy?
No. Now, I think you make a good point. Like, they're not as buttoned up maybe as people think or they used to be. They're moving into the modern world like a little gradually, slowly, right? But they used to be. Talk about the Yankee way. When I was hearing the stuff from Bill Livesey, who I mentioned before, the guy that ran player development in the 80s, it was like you had to blouse your pants. The stirrups had to be 4 inches. You know, there was like a lot there in addition to the hair and beard. And now the hair and beard thing is left, but a lot of that other stuff isn't. And Boone is actually a good person to run the clubhouse in this too, because it's like, okay, we have the Yankee way. It is what it is. But within that, you guys can be your own people. I mean, like your Marcus Stromans and your Alex Verdugos, for example, didn't feel like they couldn't be themselves. I mean, Verdugo had his shave, but Stroman had his, you know, his throwback T-shirts that he's wearing over his uniform in the dugout last year. So it's like they're coming along. in that way.
So speaking of that, Cashman, going back to Cash, the evolution of the GM and then the downgrade of the manager, where does that, for you, where does that lie? Because I mean, I feel that managers, have a voice in what goes on, but obviously now the GM has elevated to a point where they're kind of all encompassing.
Yeah. I think that has been a trend overall in the game. I think the two New York teams are a little bit more old school that way. Cashman's old school because he's, no offense, Brian, you're old school because you're a little old. Like, you've been doing this a long time. And when he came up in the game, the manager wrote the lineup. It wasn't even a question. And he's basically stuck to that. I mean, there's a lot of talk about how, there's like analytics goons in the tunnel and, telling Boone, like, you better, like, it's not like that. Boone runs the clubhouse. Boone runs the lineup. Boone makes the moves in game. He's someone who buys into much of the analytics stuff. If he didn't buy in, he wouldn't have gotten that job.
Yeah.
But from 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock, he's in charge of what happens on the field. And one thing I found with the Mets too is sort of a pleasant surprise, in my opinion, is that David Stearns also believes that. And this is maybe unfair, but like, he doesn't look the part of a guy who lets the manager run his own game. Like, he looks like the Harvard buttoned up, new school. Here's your lineups. But no, Mendoza truly, genuinely is in charge of the game. And Stearns doesn't. If he makes a move that's against what the numbers say, Stearns doesn't. He's not in trouble. Mendoza. Stearns might say like, "Oh, let's talk through what you were thinking." But so there's a separation of church and state there, front office and manager, that actually does exist with both New York teams.
You know what, though, Andy? That was well put. I think a lot of people, when Mendoza got hired, and I'm one of them, I think a lot of people thought he was going to be like a patsy for the front office.
Yeah.
He turned out not to be at all. He definitely ran his own ship. You could see it. And he was again, it's funny. So I've worked with a lot of Venezuelans through the years. I really wasn't familiar with him at all. So I was like, who's this guy? But he turned out to be really a pleasant surprise. I thought, on the field and in the locker room, I thought he did a really great job during the regular season, especially I think in the postseason, he struggled a little, I think. And again, it's tough. It's a different, it's a totally different atmosphere and thing. If I'm being honest, though, I do think he struggled a little bit. I think he'll probably learn and get better from it, just from what I can tell.
Remember, I'm just curious, would you remember what some of the moves were, or some of the things that
I thought some of the things down the stretch he got lucky with, and again, this is just off the cuff talking, but I thought in the Braves doubleheader, he had Taylor and Bader in the same lineup while Marte was sitting on the bench. I don't think anybody I don't think there's any pitcher in baseball that would rather face Marte wouldn't rather face those two guys.
Yeah, I see what you're
Taylor
saying.
did a great job. Marte ended up getting 2 huge hits, coming off the bench. But I thought there were a lot of little things like that, where little moves I thought the other thing I think he struggled with, I'm being honest, is I feel like down the stretch, and again, it was a kind of a cluster, obviously, because it was such a tight race and everything. I think he didn't really use his bench a lot. And then when he needed to give some guys maybe a little break or a little time, or maybe just give a guy a day, he couldn't do it because it was too important of a game. So down the last 2 weeks, he did, like, for example, Luis Torrens did a very good job for the Mets when he got a chance to play. He didn't play a whole lot. Alvarez really struggled the first couple of rounds of the playoffs. How do you play Torrens when he hadn't played in a month? I hadn't seen him at bat in a month. He's a good, Luis is a catcher. He was my client for a while. Good guy, really, down to earth, nice person, and, good player, and definitely was a positive impact on the team. But I think a lot of guys like that, people were calling for McNeil to come out. McNeil hadn't played at all. Obviously that was an injury situation, but Acuna gave them a good spark when Lindor got hurt.
That's what
then he disappeared.
And he got put on ice.
And then he disappeared. And then all of a sudden, they were like, they need a spark. And they're like, well, we can't play Acuna now. The guy played 2 weeks in the big leagues, and we haven't seen him in almost a month. So I thought some of those things, he got a little trapped under himself. And again, I understand why, and I know it's a tough thing to do, and it's easier said than done. But I thought he made a couple of little mistakes like that, and I think that there's a couple of relief pitchers I think he leaned on a little bit too heavy. That struggled. So I mean, there was a bunch of things that I saw. But overall, I to get to the original question and point was, I thought he really did a great job, and you could see he was running his own ship, and the guys loved him, and you could see that he related to the players, and not only the Latin players, he related to the American players. They liked him, and he seemed like a really good dude. It seems like a really good dude. So I think he did a fantastic job.
It's interesting. What would you say your perspective from being so involved in baseball in Venezuela? It is sort of like the name Carlos Mendoza sort of came out of nowhere onto the big stage. I mean, he even as a Yankee bench coach, he wasn't getting that much. Like,
that's what I said. I was like, who's Carlos Mendoza?
I mean, he got interviews for a couple of those cycles through some off seasons for managerial jobs, but he was like another coach guy. That guy. I mean, I knew him because I covered the Yankees, and thought he was great. But I know what you're saying, big picture. So for him to come and not be like, if someone had asked you 5 years ago to say, give me the top 5 Venezuelans who will be the next MLB manager, he's probably not top of mind.
No one was going to name him.
So for him to then come out and be like a guy, he is a guy, and the presence and the smarts and, like you said, all those things that, I mean, you get into moves and stuff, and I'm sure a lot of that is fair as I'm going back over it in my mind. But that's, and I know you're not saying that's what defines him, because what defines him is like, wow, this guy's like going to be doing this a long time, and he's got great presence. And like, where did this come from?
It sounds like I'm bashing him, but I was so impressed with him during the season that I think he struggled a little bit. But again, the postseason is a different animal altogether, and it just might be that he just struggled with it. But I, like you said, I think for a guy like that, and then talking to people like yourself, people who've covered him and know him, he just seems like a great dude. I don't know him personally, but I know like Fonzie Edgardo, like Gardo loves him. He thinks the world of him. He thinks he's a great guy. And, it seems like, and it's not only just the Venezuelan guys that like him. It's, it's reporters and, people that cover the team. And it just seems like he seems like a great fit. And I'm going to guess he's just going to get better and better and better, because he's one of those guys. But I'm super critical. I watch a lot of games. I spend a lot of time at the stadium. And I mean, I'm going back to, from when I was a kid with Davey Johnson or whatever it is. And then I ended up actually working with Davey a little bit and got to know him, like that. Davey was such a great manager, but you watch these games all the time, and it's easy to pick apart one move, or why didn't he do this?
Oh yeah. We'll always pack something.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but I thought Carlos was a great manager, and but the most impressive thing was you could tell it was his team. It wasn't, hey, bat this guy third today. We have a good feeling about this. The analytics are saying it.
No, not at all. And again, Boone the same way, although I'll say that I think Boone's terrific too, in a different way. They're very different guys. But with Mendoza, you see it even more in-game. It reminds me a little bit of Alex Cora and Buck Showalter, in that, like, I know that guy's managing the game. Move to move. It's like you are proactive in that. Boone's a little bit more, here's my plan, I'll adapt a little bit. An unbelievable touch with like the emotions of his guys and like putting guys in the right positions, things like that. But Mendoza's like pushing buttons all the time. It's pretty fun to watch, actually. Really
good. Boone is amazing. I mean, Boone, I'm a big fan of his as well. I mean, this is a guy who's, just literally in the family business. I mean, his brother, his dad, his grandfather. I mean, they're generation to generation. I mean, this guy knows the game inside and out, and he just seems like a good dude who has a real, like you said, a good feel for his team. So,
yes, exactly.
Wow, Andy, man, listen, thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it. Again, you're on point as a Yankee fan. I love it. Everybody, get the book, The Yankee Way. It's amazing.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, Andy, thank you so much. Good talking to you. Good seeing you. We'll be in touch. All right.
All right. See you.
Thanks, man. All right. Yep. Bye-bye. All right. Well, that was great, Lou. Andy's a good guy. I've known Andy a long time.
Yeah.
And it's good to get some of that inside perspective on things. It was good to get the conversation rolling with him. So I'm sure our audience is good will have enjoyed that. So I think that's kind of where we are now.
Yeah, man, right now it's just getting ready for next weekend's football. By the way, I know there's no Miami minute this week, but there might be a Cam Ward minute. I think
it's going to be a new segment in our show. We talked about a little.
Cam Ward minute?
Cam Ward should be the number one pick in the draft. If you're the Tennessee Titans, I know they just got rid of their general manager. If you are looking for a great quarterback and a great person, Cam Ward's your guy. Take him, roll the dice on him, go get him, and let him work his magic. The guy he's a really unique player, and I think he's a guy who's a winner, and he's gonna do great. Our defense just struggled. If it wasn't for Miami's defense this year, Cam would have been the Heisman Trophy winner, and Cam would have been I believe could have been a national champion.
I mean, if he would have played the whole game, maybe, you never know.
That game didn't mean anything. You know what? It was the best thing that happened. And I'm glad you brought that up. You know what? Let's make it a Miami minute. I'm glad you brought that up. They let the other quarterback play. They gave him a chance. I had seen him the year before. I didn't think he was the guy to take over for Cam Ward. I think once everybody saw that and realized that he struggled when a game that we should have won, that Cam left in good hands at halftime. Some things happened. Big shout out to the Cavender twins, particularly Hannah Cavender, number 15, the point guard for the Miami Hurricanes women's basketball team. Her boyfriend is Carson Beck. Carson Beck, by the way, was projected as the number one pick in the draft this year, was projected as the Heisman Trophy winner. He had a tough year, didn't have the best line. Georgia had a down year. Carson Beck, and then he got hurt. Okay. Carson Beck is now coming to Miami. He's going to take Cam Ward's spot. And I'm going to go on record on my platform here, our platform, the Agent of the Fan podcast, Miami, back-to-back, number one picks in the draft, Carson Beck, Heisman Trophy.
Wow.
And the number one pick in the draft, 26.
You heard it here first, folks.
There you go. Everybody, thank you for joining us. It's been a great show. We'll see you again next week. Thank you. Take care.
Take care, guys.